Coda's ready to head out to Bannack today. We're going to go check out the ghost town out there after she gives me lots of loving. It's a snowy day here in Butte, so we'll see what it's like in Bannack. Welcome back to another Doberlander adventure. Today we are headed out to explore the ghost town of Bannack, Montana. Bannack was Montana's first major discovery of gold. Placer gold was found here in July of 1862 by John White and other members of the group known as Pike's Peakers. They discovered gold on the banks of a creek. They named the creek Grasshopper due to the big grasshopper population in the area. White filed one of the first documented claims on what later became Montana. This news of the new found gold traveled fast as many miners started showing up to Grasshopper diggings, and soon after the mining camp would be known as Bannack. Bannack was named for the Bannack natives who frequented this area. Bannack at its peak had a population of roughly 10,000 people. There were 3 hotels, 3 bakeries, 3 blacksmith shops, 2 stables, 2 meat markets, a grocery store, a restaurant, a brewery, a billiard hall, and 4 saloons. Today, there are still roughly 50 buildings standing to explore, and it's owned and ran by Montana State Parks. So right here's the park office. Looks like it's private. Probably the forest rangers maybe stay there. Snowed a little bit today. Supposed to be nice and sunny, but that's okay. We'll see how long my hands make it. That's the real deal. They allow you to go in these buildings. They even allow you to take your pets in there, which is pretty cool. Look at these old door handles. Old creaky wood floors. Look at that wallpaper. It's a nice old stove. Yeah, it's really nice. Wrought iron something GE company. It's a big stove too. Looks like it's had some water damage over the years, but overall, still in pretty good shape. There's the Dobermans of the Doberlander. They got their jackets on. They're ready for this tour of this old ghost town. Aren't you? You guys ready? Yeah? Let's do it. This is the assay office, and it was one of the first buildings built in Bannack. The miners would bring their mineral specimens here to be analyzed for its silver and gold content. It also served as Oliver's stage station and butcher shop. This building was a city drugstore and at various times was used as a general store and even a school at one time when the regular school was in disrepair. This building was originally the county courthouse known as Beaver County Courthouse. It was built in 1876 for $14,000. It was the second brick courthouse in Montana. In February of 1881, the courthouse in the neighboring town of Dillon was chosen as the county seat. After this happened, this building sat empty until 1891 when it was purchased by Dr. John Singleton Meade for $1,250. Dr. Meade remodeled the old courthouse into a plush hotel. It has a large kitchen, dining room, and living quarters in the back. This hotel became the center of Bannack for Montana travelers and social events. The hotel was in use on and off for many years as mining activity started and stopped in the area. The hotel shut down for good in the 1940s. I absolutely loved the spiral staircase in this building. This was originally Skinner's Saloon and then later became a general merchandise store. These are some of the remains of equipment used in the several different mining phases the area went through. This cool old truck is one of the few I've ever come across in my exploring of old mining areas and ghost towns that still had the complete engine in it. Let's head up to the cemetery that's located up on the hill above town. A lot of the grave markers are no longer here, but there are a few remaining. This cemetery was used from 1862 to around 1880. This area of cabins was known as Bachelor's Row. This house here was the Rowe Graves house. It was built in 1866 or 67 by William Rowe and was the first frame house built here. Rowe was one of the first miners to get rich here, but later changed his interest to freighting, merchandising, and banking. Rowe later ended up moving to Dillon and was one of the founders of the State Bank in 1899. F. L. Graves acquired the house soon after. He helped develop the first electric gold dredge. This was the first and only church in Bannack, known as the Methodist Church Hope Chapel, and was built in 1877. This was known as the bootlegger's cabin, and according to some locals in the area in the early 1960s, this cabin housed the last known bootleggers to operate in Bannack. This was the Bissett house and was where Meade Bissett, also known as Mitty to his friends, lived. Mitty was a stockman and at one time owned Hotel Meade and the famous Bank Exchange Saloon. He also raised sheep. He passed away in Bannack in 1919. In the early 20th century, outbreaks of things such as scarlet fever, influenza, whooping cough, and other things occurred in Bannack. The Bissett house was used sometimes to quarantine people who contracted some of these diseases to keep an epidemic from breaking out in Bannack. People were quarantined until they recovered or died here. Some say this house is haunted by the children who died here from one of the diseases. They say you can hear the sounds of crying babies coming from the house, so they call it the Crying Baby House. On our trip into the house, we, however, didn't hear any crying babies. As we walk a few more old houses and stores, I will share some more history on Bannack. Other than the usual saloons, brothels, etc., residents found other ways to socialize, such as ball and dancing parties, 2 to 3 times per week. Traveling circuses would also occasionally come to town, and residents would gather wildflowers, fish, go on horseback rides, and also go to the bowling alley in Bannack. In the wintertime, they would also sled down the hills and even ice skate down the creek. Just off the main route are the jails. The road between Bannack and Virginia City had more murders, holdups, and robberies than almost any other comparable stagecoach route. In May of 1863, Sheriff Plummer had the jail on the right built and was the first jail built in what became Montana Territory. The one on the left is uncertain when it was built. Inside the smaller jail on the left, you'll see the rings on the floor that the prisoners were chained to. The view of the gallows from the cell windows were a reminder to those who were locked up. This was the home of Dr. Ryburn. Dr. Ryburn was one of the last doctors here in Bannack. He practiced here from 1897 to 1915. Ryburn traveled in all kinds of weather via sleigh, automobile, and even horse and buggy to deliver babies, treat mining and ranching industries, and tend to gunshot wounds. When his patients didn't have the cash to pay him, he would accept payment in vegetables and other commodities, as well as chickens. This house was one of my favorites due to all the very cool items in the house. This school building was a Masonic lodge upstairs and a schoolhouse downstairs. This building was built in 1874 and cost $1,500 to build. The square and compass above the windows on the second floor was carved from hardwood and mounted on a hickory breadboard. The school portion was a public school with grades kindergarten through 8th. It served as a school for over 70 years by the time it closed in the early 1940s. Through the years, the school would sometimes fall in disrepair or not be big enough for the amount of students, so other buildings in town were used. Students who attended school here said that at times snow would blow through the cracks between the wallboards. I loved the old merry-go-round out front. These are the gallows, and they were built due to an order from Sheriff Henry Plummer to hang convicted murderer John Horan. But Sheriff Plummer and 2 of his deputies ended up being hung from them as well. Prior to coming to Bannack, Plummer was convicted of manslaughter in 1858 in California and sentenced to prison. He was given a medical pardon in 1859 and arrived in Bannack in November of 1862. Not long after he arrived in Bannack, he was tried and acquitted for the murder of Jack Cleveland, but was still elected as sheriff in May of 1863. Legend says that he organized a criminal gang in Bannack known as the Innocents. They say he had around 25 members. They all identified themselves with a black handkerchief tied in a sailor's knot. They say the gang used Skinner's Saloon as their headquarters. Legend says that in a time frame of 8 months, the gang killed over 100 people and committed countless robberies even in broad daylight. Then in December of 1863, Red Yeager was captured and hung by a vigilante as a suspect in all these robberies and killings. But prior to being hung, Red reportedly confessed and implicated Sheriff Plummer as the leader of a criminal gang known as the Innocents. One of the vigilantes found this out, and they held a meeting and decided to hang Plummer and his deputies. On January 10, 1864, the vigilantes from Alder Gulch came to Bannack to find Plummer. They captured Plummer and his deputies, and all 3 men were captured and brought up to the gallows and hung by the very gallows that Plummer had built. Bannack, like most mining towns, were prohibited from non-essential mining, which included gold during World War II. This was the start of the end of the town of Bannack. After the war, some mining resumed, but due to the decline in the price for gold, the population of Bannack started to dwindle as people left to go elsewhere for jobs. By the late 1940s, Bannack was starting to become a ghost town. This ghost town is well preserved and definitely worth a visit. It is open all year round, and at the time we visited, it was $8 a person. There's a nice picnic area there as well if you want to take a break and have some lunch. Thanks for joining us on this adventure in Bannack, and we'll see you out on the next Doberlander adventure.